Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of 100 Acres of Ink. I'm Tegan. I'm here with Chris.
Hi.
What have you been up to this week, Chris?
Um, Mostly trying to figure out what to play because things have gotten pretty shaken up. Things are a little crazy.
Yeah, you had kind of solidified on playing Amber Emerald in the current metagame, and then the bans came and everything kind of got shaken up. What have you been playing with? Are you still on Amber Emerald for the most part?
Um, kind of. It's been pretty fun. I still think it's got a really great place in the meta. Um, Boosted not only by hearing some comments from like artifacts on the Articast talking about um how it is to play it, listening to Kawa talk about it on Podcana. Um, I do think it's maybe a little bit harder to play now because the deck that it was really good against, which was like Hiram Ruby Sapphire, is not as powerful. And I've definitely been playing around with like Green Steel. I tried Ruby Amethyst for a second. I tried. I've been trying to work on a like green purple library Lyle aristocrat style deck that hasn't gone anywhere yet. Yeah, but I think, it's just the meta's kind of crazy right now. It's a little bit of everything. But how about you? Where are you at? What have you been playing?
I don't know. Nothing feels good without Hiram is kind of where I'm at. I understand the reasons why Hiram got banned, but I was a Hiram enjoyer. And I don't know, deck just doesn't feel as good without Hiram in it. And I like drawing cards.
Yeah, turns
Drawing
out drawing
cards
cards, good
is
thing.
it's a good thing. It's a fun thing. So I don't know. I've been messing around. I am working on a Ruby Sapphire build without Hiram. Obviously, the deck is still competitive. DKP navigated it to win in Germany last weekend. I I've been having conversations this week, and everyone was like, "See, the deck's fine." But also, like, I think DKP could pilot just about any deck and make it to top cut in just about any tournament. There are certain players that are just like a cut above most people. Like, if you put any deck into Zan's hands or into Ed's hands or into DKP's hands, I think they're going to navigate it and pilot it better than a lot of people.
Yeah, Zan actually has he tends to say this a lot when they bring up, well, what's the best deck in the format? Um, and what's kind of going to be the best deck? And he brings it up a lot, especially when he's talking to Jeremy, which is that the best deck in the format isn't a deck that I do well at. It isn't a deck that like DKP does well at, that Ed does well at. No, the best deck in the format is going to be whatever deck some random person who's
Yeah.
not super great at it can take to a tournament and come out and do super well with, right? The best players in the game are just kind of going to always do well because that's why they're the best players in the game. They can kind of take whatever and use the level of fundamentals of the game that they know and kind of crush. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I am not DKP, right? I am not uh, Ed or Zan, and so my I don't know, my skill. I'm an okay player, but I'm not uh, anything compared to them, and so I can take you know uh, DKP's list, and it's difficult to navigate. Like, there's a lot of hard decisions. There's a lot of difficult inking decisions. There's a lot of, which card am I grabbing off of vision? Which card am I grabbing off of how far off of develop? And those are really important decisions with that deck. And
mhm,
if you pick the wrong one, you can just sink your entire game without even really realizing it in the moment. And
mhm.
so, all that to say that, like, I think the deck is still good, but I don't think it's as approachable, and I don't think it's not as forgiving as it was, right?
Yeah.
When you have a bunch of cards in hand, and you have a lot of options, it's easier to make the right decisions. And with less cards in hand, it's much harder to make the right decisions.
Yeah, I would definitely agree on that. The red blue deck has always had a really high skill ceiling. Like if you could kind of master it, you could be really really good at it. It's a very powerful control deck. And now the floor is a little bit higher because it's you don't have kind of the ability to fall back on Hiram to refill your hand to look for more answers and more threats. Now your margins of error for like, is this the right call? Is this the right call? Get really, really small. Um, I still think, it's definitely really powerful, and I'm sure you and a bunch of other players who are still on it, get a couple more reps in on it. It'll get a little bit easier to make those decision points. But yeah, especially with all like the sheer amount of card selection you have in that deck, the decision points get really, really hard,
Yeah.
right? And then you can see that all the time.
The deck feels a lot less consistent now as well, and I think
Yeah.
that's part of the big thing is, like, it felt very consistent before, and, if you think back to, like, I don't know, set 4, right? I was playing the deck a lot in set 4. We didn't have Sail yet, right? And so, like, you had, Tipo. I think we got Tipo that set, um, but we didn't get Sail, uh, and or maybe it was, like, Tipo was set 5, but we were still playing, one jump ahead, right? And one
Hmm.
jump was uninkable, and so you didn't always have ramp when you needed it, and so like you could just end up in really weird spots early on. And the deck just wasn't as consistent about
Hmm.
getting to those high ink totals. And then once it had Sail and Tipo and 8 sources of turn 2 ramp, like the deck just got super consistent. It
Hmm.
just
Yeah.
you just almost always have it. And when you don't, you find it pretty quickly and you're able to like ramp up and kind of get there anyway. And I think the deck is back to where it was maybe in set 4, or maybe even a little bit worse, where like that consistency just isn't there. Um, so I've been playing a lot of that deck. I have been playing a little bit of RP, not so much the like evasive
Hmm.
pile RP. I've been playing a little bit more like traditional RP. I like to bounce rabbit. I like to draw cards. So we'll see what I end up playing this weekend. I got today and tomorrow to try to figure it out before Sunday, and we'll see what I decide on.
Sure. Uh, what's going on Sunday?
Yeah, there's a couple of things coming up here in the area. So
Mhm.
the Bippity Boppity Brawl is coming up this Sunday here in Newark, California. It's hosted by 88 Card House and Margolis Gaming Labs. I'll be there. I know you're going to be there. Um, and it's going to be down in Newark at the Wyndham Garden Hotel, which is across the street from 88 Card House. It'll be 45-minute Swiss rounds in 2-game format and a top cut. Top prize is a foil Cinderella DLC promo. So pretty exciting, pretty nice prizing. And then coming up on April 26th in the Central Valley up in Sacramento, there's going to be a case tournament. So I'm going to try to get up there for that as well, probably.
Nice, nice, nice. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to going to the brawl. It'll be nice to see a bunch of kind of see what the meta looks like at this level. Um, and I'm not gonna lie, it'll be nice to try to add another DLC pro into my collection.
Yeah, you have a Let It Go, right?
I do have a Let It Go.
And I knew you were thinking about selling it, but I don't think you did, right?
I have it yet. It's still in my collection. It's still very pretty. It needs a friend. I gotta go in here and win me something.
Yeah. I would like just one. Other news kind of from around the game, the Player Hub seems to be live. I think it might have gotten launched maybe a little bit early. There's still some kind of bugs and difficulties in it, but I think you can sign up for accounts. Or at least there was a moment when you could. So go try to reserve your names and get your display names in.
Yeah, this was a holdover from back when Thea was running tournaments. This is back from the old Pixelborn days. You could actually use this as a platform. This was the Lorcana Play Network for those of you who were playing around that time. So if you still have your login information from that, it does still work. Um, as evidenced by a couple of friends of mine who were able to log into their accounts. I think from what I'm given to understand right now, they've shifted it back to it's just kind of stores and event organizers, and they're working on the player side of it. But yeah, from what I also know, it sounds like you're right that they had kind of released this a little earlier than they wanted to for the general sort of player base. But who knows? Hopefully, they'll give us more information on it. And yeah.
I know that we're going to be starting to use this for Reign of Jafar. I think stores were told that they could run the set championship for this set on it.
Hmm.
So I assume it will be operational by this set championship season potentially. I know people are urgently waiting to try to get out of melee, um, but yeah, it's at least nice to see some progress
Yeah.
on it. Like it was something that was kind of talked about, and then we didn't hear anything more. So nice to hear or see some progress, and yeah, the Play Hub is coming.
Yeah. Honestly, glad we got some kind of news because we're still kind of quiet on Worlds and anything else going on. But speaking of Worlds and speaking of metas, what are we looking at?
Yeah, I so this is the kind of post Hiram ban meta, at least from what is reported on Inkdex, over the past week or so since the ban. And no surprise here, a big fall off in Ruby Sapphire. Still about 10% meta share, but Sapphire Steel just completely gone. Nobody's playing that deck anymore. More people are playing Yellow Red Mufasa than are playing Sapphire Steel, which I think is a real shame, to be honest. To see a color combo just completely drop out of the meta, I think
Yeah.
is a shame. But one of the big winners that I guess we didn't really anticipate maybe as much, but Purple Steel Bounce just shooting to the top of the meta share. It was a good deck last format, and it got Cobra, so it's no surprise to see it kind of at the top in terms of playability. Of course, Amber Steel also surging back into playability with Ruby Sapphire taking a much smaller portion of the meta, and Amethyst Ruby poking its head back up. This is a deck that has kind of been on the decline for a while, but it's back, it seems like. And we'll take a look at it seems to have come back in a little bit of a different way.
Hmm.
And then right after that, Green Steel.
Yep. Ruby RP. Oh boy. Here I was hoping just for a little bit. It wasn't going to be everywhere.
Oh, RP's never going away.
Yeah, no, not ever. Set one to now. Always here, always in the background.
As always, our judge segment tonight. We've just got a real simple one tonight, and it's the interaction between two cards, one of which has seen some competitive play here recently, and so I thought it'd be kind of fun to talk about this one. This is an interaction between Robin Hood Sharpshooter, which when you quest, you get to reveal 4 cards, and then you get to play an action from it for free. So in this case, we're revealing a Grammatala, a Tipo, a Sail, and an All Is Found. Um, at this point, you have no cards in your discard. And so the question here is, are you able to play All Is Found and put 2 cards into your Inkwell, face down and exerted, from the 4 that are, or from the 3, I guess, that are discarded by Robin Hood's ability?
Uh, yes, is the answer. Because of the way that Robin Hood's effect actually works, is that first you have to finish resolving Robin Hood's effect, which is when it quests, right? It'll quest, you'll gain, you'll activate its ability, you'll look at the top 4 cards of your library, you'll reveal an action, which is cost 6 or less, and in this case is All Is Found. Um, then you can choose to play it for free. You do have to, however, put the rest in your discard. So that finishes resolving. The rest of the cards will go to the discard, and then you will play All Is Found, and All Is Found's effect will activate as the next card or as the next effect coming out of the bag. Which means because Sail the Azurite Sea, Tipo Growing Sun, and Grandma Tala are now in your discard, you can now put them in your Inkwell from All Is Found. Yay, synergy.
Yeah. Pretty cool little interaction between these two cards. I hope one day Robin Hood gets to see more play, but it came out, right after Brawl, which
Yeah, Brawl and Sisu. Well, yeah, Brawl and Sisu. Not helpful for this card.
yeah, they really kind of hamper its playability. Let's move into our kind of main topic, and that is, where is the metagame really at? What decks are seeing play now that Hiram is banned? We're going to take a look at a few deck lists here and kind of see how these archetypes are changing a little bit. Um, the first is Ruby Sapphire. So uh, Ruby Sapphire, as we were kind of talking about, is still going to be around. It is seeing less play than it was certainly. I think there are kind of two variants of it that we're seeing. One is a kind of heavy item variant. That's going all in on like Oswald and Workshop and maybe the Queen Diviner or Prince John to be able to kind of recur items and play them that way. And then it tries to get to like an OTK with the big Tamatoa.
Mhm.
We're not going to look at that list here. The list that we're looking at is the first place list from the Germany event last weekend that Ruby Sapphire top that DKP played. And what we've got here is kind of a development on his Shark list from set 4. He's kind of been playing it for, I think, most of last set into this set. Um, but it's looking pretty standard, I think, to people that have seen his lists before. The kind of new card here is All Is Found, which is a way to ink cards from your discard pile. He is playing 2 copies of the Tamatoa. He used to play like 2 or 3 copies of Hiram to interact with those popsicles. I know at the start of this set, he was on like I think 2 and then 2 copies of Tamatoa. But this is the way this list has kind of gone. He's still playing 1 copy of Goofy to kind of high roll against the aggro style lists. I think in the LCCC, the final round of that, he ended up taking the Goofy out, and he's playing a third Tamatoa. What do you think about this list?
Um, I think it's pretty interesting. I like that the change of the Hiram sort of draw engine hasn't really deterred DKP at all. I can definitely see he's leaning. Given that he's leaning on All Is Found, it definitely looks like he's leaning more toward the like ramp as hard as you can to a board wipe, and then sort of like win out either by playing protect the castle with manners, or being able to be like, I'm going to play Maui Shark and start you know digging through my deck and also gaining incidental lore by playing a bunch of actions. Like I can kind of see the strategy here, and I really like it. It still very much feels kind of like a control deck to me, although it feels maybe a little less combo control in the way that like a big Tamatoa, like little Tamatoa, or like a big Tam, little Tam dime deck would work out. Um, but honestly, I think it looks really good. And yeah, obviously, it's definitely really strong. It was in the hands of a great pilot, but I think that still speaks to how well this deck was put together and how well it works.
Yeah, I think All Is Found is an interesting card. He said he only resolved it like once during the entire tournament, but he is still on it for the LCCC. It does give Maui something extra to do when Maui isn't able to challenge anything,
Mm-hmm.
because it is a 5 cost song. So I think that's kind of an interesting synergy there. And because you have so many of these kind of cheap actions, the sail, the develops, the vision of the futures, the how far all goes that you're planning on trying to really use early. Even if you're not playing against a discard deck, which I know he had in mind when he put this card into the list, you're still getting a lot of those actions into your discard fairly early on. It's not like you're putting a bunch of characters out and you have to wait for them to get banished to get into your inkwell to get into your discard to be able to ink them. Those actions go right into the discard, and can be fuel for your inkwell.
Yeah. Honestly, I love that bit of synergy. I really like this. Uh, I'll say as a discard player, I'm a little sad to see people go on to play more actions because obviously that's less targets for Ursula too. But I really like the build of this. I really like using kind of like Maui Shark as an additional, like, you were already using it as an additional win condition, but now you can kind of see it do a little bit more because now you can play a bunch more actions. Now you can like cycle through your deck a little faster. It's pretty cool.
Some of the other archetypes that are kind of popping back up, I mentioned that RP is kind of showing up in a little bit of a different form. This is what RP is looking like this set. It's kind of a RP evasives list, and so it's playing four of that two drop Pegasus. I think both as a potential answer to Diablos. So while Emerald Steel can just zap it with a spell, Emerald Amethyst discard and Emerald
Amber.
Amber discard are going to have a harder time dealing with that Pegasus. And so it kind of puts that Diablo in check early on. But this deck also plays three copies of Peter Pan Shadowfinder. And Peter Pan Shadowfinder gives all of your evasives rush. And so this deck playing those Pegasus, which then are just little rush bullets that can come in and do 3 damage for 2 ink. But it also plays two copies of Iago, which is a 4/6 Vanish character that has a very large body that can come in and hit things for 4. Um, it's also playing the shark. So the shark can come in and have rush and swing into something. And Maui Shark with rush is a terrifying thought, let me tell you. Um, and being able to like bring that in immediately and be able to rebuy an action immediately is pretty powerful. I think that's one of the weaknesses of that DKP list is like sometimes you just play the shark on an open board and they Zeus it or they play a Tremaine and it's just banished.
Mm-hmm.
So having a way to rush the shark in and immediately do damage, clear something on the board, and rebuy an action is pretty powerful. This deck, of course, is playing the 4B preps. It's playing a one of Dragonfire instead of the kind of normal RP removal suite of the ladies and chairs. It's playing two copies of Finders Keepers, which is an action, so it's kind of safe from that Ursula 2. What do you think about the new RP style that we've got going on?
Well, from a very subjective standpoint, curse you, RP. Why are you back again? But from an objective one, yeah, actually, it makes perfect sense given that most of the kind of discourse around draw engines and cards to worry about shifted from okay, well, Hiram's a problem. How do we deal with that? To okay, now the bird is a problem again, and how do we deal with the Emerald Diablo faithful companion? And the answer is yeah, evasive bodies or rushed evasive bodies. Things that can stop you from being able to leave it exerted. This is a bunch of great answers to this. I will point out that it doesn't have the. I think you mentioned this, but it doesn't have that same level of recursive draw that you would get out of playing something like Rabbit. Um, and that has its own trades, right? Because now you get Genie, which is evasive, so you can always go Peter Pan on 3, Genie on 4, and now you have like a rush evasive that you can draw a
Yep.
card off and smash things into. Um, but it does also like it doesn't have quite the same resiliency that you can get off of like I'm gonna bounce Rabbit a bunch of times and just draw a bunch of cards, right? Um, yeah, it's an interesting take. I can see sort of some of the lines here, especially with playing the library. Um, and like the fact that Pegasus is a 3/1, so you can always like move it to the library. You can very readily expect it to die and net you a card anyway. It's RP doing RP things, making value trades, drawing cards, and then just kind of killing you in the like card advantage mid to late game. It's pretty good. I'm mostly just sad that RP is back because there was a small moment where it wasn't.
Yep. Um, of note here, no snakes in this list,
Yep.
so that does make your goat a little bit worse as well. Um, Playing 4 copies of Crab, even though you're only playing 2 copies of Diablo, which I think is interesting here. But of course, Crab synergizes well, potentially with that Peter Pan to like boost it up and have another rush thing that can do 5 damage to something.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, this is the new RP. Of course, that's not the only thing in the format. As we saw in the that meta snapshot, we're seeing a lot of purple steel. So this is what purple steel is looking like these days. 4 of the purple one drops, that cantrip and replace themselves. You do kind of see 2 different variants of this. One that will play kind of genies and rabbits, and one that will play like genies and docks. So
Hmm.
this is kind of the genie and dock package.
Hmm.
Smee, giant cobra. You've got fox in here, but again, no snake. You've got the crab, you've got Pete, you've got White Rose. And this is really just a lore machine. It goes wide early. It's got things to kind of help control the board early with Calhoun. And then it can just quest hard with things like Smee and Genie, and then close the game quickly with things like Giant Cobra and Goat Bounces or White Roses.
And
Um,
yeah, it's also very defensive in that you can in fact do like Pete bounce shenanigans here. You can do Cobra shenanigans if you want to like use Cobra as removal and then bounce it and then play it again. You don't have to discard a card in order to gain 2 lore every time you play it. It's just a 4/4 body for 3, which is kind of great. We know that from Fox, right? It also lets you just kind of re-trigger all sorts of things. I love this engine, and I'm kind of glad. This is one of the harder matches for both of the decks that I like to play, but I'm kind of glad that this is an archetype that's like shooting up in popularity because this was just a kind of cool, grindy sort of like tempo-y deck that I was kind of glad that we get to see this set. It's good to see it on the rise.
it's interesting, like, this is not a deck that I feel like got a lot of attention until really last set. Um, and it really kind of started to solidify itself last set as a real contender. I know there were people that played it at the American Championship and made top 16. Zach Bivens made top 8 and is going to Worlds based on playing this deck.
Hmm.
And it really kind of solidified itself last format with Genie. I think being Genie and White Rose kind of being the cards that really put it on the map. I think Doc really kind of helped, but the Genie and White Rose really kind of helped solidify it. And Giant Cobra has really kind of put it over the top, I think, into being a really competitive deck. As a Ruby Sapphire enjoyer, this is one of my least favorite decks to face. When they go wide early with things like Diablo and Rabbit, if they're playing Rabbit, I was testing this matchup for like 3 hours last night, my worst matchup. And I get to board wipe and they get to draw 3 cards, and their
Yeah.
hand is pretty much completely back to normal, and they're at 10 lore. And I have 3 cards and they have 7. And, I just try to claw my way back in and can't really do it. So, it's a scary deck, and it's a deck that's for real.
Yeah. This is on my list of decks that I'm like, I kind of really want to get good with this because this just seems the sort of weird grindy thing that I was really liking to play when I was last playing Magic. But yeah, I'm fully expecting to see a bunch of this deck, a bunch of Ruby Sapphire. Yeah, I'm really loving that the meta kind of exploded, even if it makes it much harder for me to be like, I'm gonna go eat these decks.
Yeah. A lot harder to meta predict what we're gonna see.
Yeah.
Green Steel, like we mentioned, is kind of back. It's looking, pretty similar to what we've seen in previous sets. This list was second place at a Win and Elsa tournament here. this weekend, or this last weekend. And I think the big addition from this set is Pete Space Pirate. This list is playing three of. It is playing four copies of Beast, two copies of the Tinkerbell, two copies of Muses. Everything else, I think, is pretty standard to what you normally see. Uh, Three copies of Hypnotize instead of four, and only three Prince John. Two copies of Merfolk, which I think is a little interesting here. Um, you're a green steel enjoyer. What's your take on this list?
Um, the two Merfolks are most likely because that you really only have the one drop in Diablo, and sometimes you just want another thing to play. I know there was a moment where I was considering playing the 2/1 Mulan that lets you draw and then discard a
Hmm.
card in that same slot. Even though it doesn't quest for two, it is a 2/1. It's inkable. I can make some early trades for you if you need them while you're looking for other pieces. Um, it's a pretty standard green steel list. I understand why three Prince Johns over four. It's an uninkable. Sometimes they're just stuck in your hand because you can't play them. Um, and yeah, I mean honestly, it's a pretty stock. Or at least this version of this is a pretty stock green steel list. No great crazy innovations, which actually tells you a lot. The deck is pretty solid and pretty stable um,
And really
for the
has
most
been
part.
since Vegas.
Yeah,
Blurple is kind of shooting up in popularity. It did pretty well last format, and with Hiram out of the format, how can you ramp and continue to draw cards? Well, you play purple. And this is one such deck that is kind of doing that. Interestingly, they're playing Bell in this deck, which I think is kind of fascinating. Really, your only early song to sing is something like "Friends on the Other Side." Um, so I'm not quite sure the real reason to kind of want to cheat that Bell out early, other than it is just a 3/3 that can help control the board early while you're ramping and doing other things. Um, of course, we're playing the purple kind of one drop suite, only one magic broom. We are playing the Diablos and the Chernobog followers. We're playing Tipo and Sail as our way to start ramping up. We've got the Elsas in here. And a couple of new cards make an appearance in this list. Two copies of the Queen Jealous Beauty, which if it's not answered, can close a game pretty quickly, questing for three, or not, I guess not questing, but
exerting
using
for
its,
three. Yeah,
yeah, exerting, using its ability. And if there's a princess, of course it's four lore instead. Two copies of Belle, four copies of the Elsa, and one of the new Donald Duck. Um, that can make your opponent have to get to 25 lore, giving you a little bit more time to control their board and uh, get your Hades down or get your Elsa down to control the board. Pretty interesting list. We haven't necessarily seen these lists be super competitive on the major stage, although there were two Blurple lists that made the top cut of North American championships. So it is a deck that is rising in popularity.
yeah. I really like the Queen as a tech in here, but I definitely agree with you. It seems a little weird to have Bell in here when your only one drop item is Popsicle. Although I guess the right, if you have the nut and you can play it, it is a good like this is my turn one play. You're not going to remove it. It'll sit here and kind of slow you down from trying to slam things sideways so you can gain lore. So I could see it for those reasons.
I feel like I would just rather play three more brooms and like four snakes. um,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I think those are all the lists I've got here. That's just kind of a snapshot of what we're seeing across the meta. It is interesting times here in Lorcana as we're adjusting to life without Hiram. I know with the Bippity Boppity Brawl this weekend, there'll be some results coming out of that tournament. I know there's going to be some very good players there. I know like Legendary Gary is coming in from Sacramento. Daniel T is coming in. I'm sure Ed will be there. So it's going to be a lot of the kind of best players in the Bay Area. So keep an eye out for results on that one. We'll probably look at some results from it next week and chat about them. Um, I'm sure there's going to be some other tournaments this weekend to keep an eye on and see how the meta continues to develop. I'll have to admit I'm still a little torn going into this weekend. I just really don't know what to play.
Sure.
I feel like I need people smarter than me to just figure out the meta, and then I'll just net deck them.
Yeah, it's one of those. There's so many options. Oh God, there's so many options.
Yeah.
Ah,
Alrighty. Well, thanks for tuning in, everyone. We're gonna keep this a short one. I appreciate it, and we'll see you in the next one.
bye.